Hello, hi, good morning, guys, and welcome back to Andy's Corner. I always wait for the intro like it's actually playing, but it's not. Anyway, this is the time I've been waiting for. Come, guys, take a seat. It's just me, you, and Jesus in the corner. Okay, guys, so this is my first sit-down video. I'm so excited. Like this is the part I've actually been waiting for. Like I love vlogging, but this is what I've been waiting for. So get excited. Welcome to me, you, and Jesus in the corner. This is my new favorite segment already. So today I'm going to be talking about growing up a kingdom kid. Okay, so let me explain what a kingdom kid is, right? So in my church, there's like different, I don't know how to explain it, but there's like different age groups. There's different age groups, right? So there's like the babies, and then there's like age groups, like I can't remember what they were, but then there's preteens, right, which is like I think 10, 11, 12, if I'm not mistaken, and then there's teens, and then there's campus, which is like uni students, and then there's singles ministry, which are like working adults, young adults who aren't married, and then there's the married ministry, and then there's another one, but I'm just not entirely sure what it's called. So yeah, and I basically grew up in this church, so it's like I've been a kingdom kid the entire time. So that's to say that Jesus has always been the foundation in my life. Like I've never known life without Jesus there, you know what I mean? So like for example, my parents used to do like these devos or devotionals where like every Sunday me and my siblings would like me them and my siblings would sit together, and like no matter what you're doing, even if you're studying, boy, you have to come and we all have to sit together, and it's like I think like 30 minutes an hour where like we would all explain, because we all obviously have big age gaps, so we like all explain what we learned in our respective classes, and then our parents would obviously explain like what is happening in what I like to call big church, but they would basically say what was going on there, and then like integrate the lessons for the relevant age groups that we would all understand, you know. So as much as yes, I understood, like I could grasp the concepts, like obviously I wouldn't always understand because I was young, you know what I mean? But I didn't realize how foundational those things are and how much they like build your moral your is that a proper English term? A moral character? I don't know if that's a proper thing, but you know what I mean? Like it builds your morals. And so like obviously you go into the week, you kind of forget about what you were told, but you don't like realize until you're older how much like it like integrates into your life and integrates into your decision making, those things that you learned. Also, just knowledge of the Bible as well. So that I think was very I was so blessed. Oh my gosh. I will never lie to you. I was so blessed to have parents that introduced me to Jesus at a young age. But with that, like when you're young, right? Obviously you're curious about stuff, right? Yeah. So when I was young, obviously I had like a lot of much older influences like my siblings and cousins, stuff like that. So I'd be curious about a lot of things, and like I'd be curious about like going out. I'd be curious about dating. I'd be curious about like, you know, all these kinds of things. Like they would be like, why do you do that? And how can I do that? Because, you know, but obviously I was very young. So I can kind of say that I never necessarily strayed away from God. I had what I like to call a boring testimony. Some of my family may disagree, but I think I had a fairly boring testimony where I didn't have like that big God moment and like I met God, and you know like I didn't have that. That's why I kind of said that like I had a bit of a boring testimony. Not to say though that there weren't moments when God showed up. Never to lie to you and say that there weren't moments that God showed up. Yeah, I felt like for a long time I didn't have like the spark that a lot of new Christians have, you know what I mean? Like especially the adults that have had that big God moment. I felt like I didn't have that like big, you know, that big spark and whatever, because I didn't know life without him. But again, that is a big blessing, you know what I mean? So I will never look down upon that fact that it's a massive blessing, but it's just something that I realized that I just never had that like excitement for God, because God was like, it's a part of my family, you know what I mean? Like it was just like, it was a normal thing for me. So in that, it was very easy for me to become complacent. Complacent meaning I didn't necessarily have the will or desire to change, like the way I'm doing life. I just became, complacent with my relationship with God because I was used to it. And believe it or not, this is a connection that I only made this week. What I realized that was starting to sound like was, oh, I already know enough information. I've read my Bible, or hey, I'll talk to God later. I just don't feel like it, or yeah, God knows I love him though. And the other important one, why do I need to keep reading the Bible if I'm reading the same stories that I've read growing up? You see, and that was the kicker. That was the most hectic one because it just produced ignorance and a lot of pride. You know what I mean? I was just like, but guys, this is the same Moses and Daniel and all of these things. Like I've read those. Like there's nothing new to me. There's nothing new I can discover in the Bible, which is insane. So then that one was obviously big because I realized, yes, it led me to ignorance and pride, but also I just didn't read my Bible, guys. Like praying. Oh, I can pray, Shem. I can fast, but reading my Bible was a rough one for me because I don't know. It's just like I had this very ignorant idea that there was nothing new that I could really learn. So it's not that I wouldn't read my Bible, but it was like I wouldn't read my Bible. I don't know. I'm lying to you. I just wouldn't read my Bible. Not reading my Bible caused me to lean on my very little and very undercooked knowledge and understanding of God. So I'd pray like, God, I really want to get to know you more while my Bible is collecting dust. It is closed. It hasn't been opened. My mic died, but we are back.
Hi, this is Andisia in editing. For context, between the time that my mic died, I was basically saying how me not reading my Bible affected my emotional connection to God. So that's what I'm explaining here in this next part.
I was saying I lost my it felt like I was losing my emotional connection to God. And also it became a thing of I'm no longer seeking him for him and his heart. I'm now seeking him for the things that he can give me, right? So for example, it would be like, hey God, please, I'd pray and I'd be like, God, please can you help me with this test that I didn't study for, right? And okay. And I'll be like, okay, you've got the foundational understanding that he is a miracle worker, but I don't have what I like to call a scriptural awareness, right? Where it's things like faith without works is dead, James 2. Or the Lord will open the heavens to bless the work of your hands, Deuteronomy 28. And so, unsurprisingly, my heart began to harden towards God because obviously I just wasn't trying to get to know him. And it was a mix of like my pride, being distracted, sometimes hurt, sometimes disappointment, and that all caused my heart to be very hardened towards him. And like, I just I didn't feel the need to change. And that can be a very scary place to be in because essentially you're still doing the right things, Well, bar that I was not reading my Bible, but I mean, I was still going to church, I was still praying, I was still listening to worship music. Like, I was still doing the right things. But it becomes a thing of I still lack the connection with God. In that case, not reading my Bible every day, I didn't understand the love God had for me. I didn't understand the provision that he had over my life. And it was very easy for me to be like, oh God, but like, why is this happening now? Because you're supposed to be a good God. Yay, guys. Yay, guys. And I was very unfair on God. Lack of scriptural awareness. Open the Bible. You'll see why God does certain things, how he does certain things. Another thing, right, in the fact that my heart was hardened was it became certain sins were losing gravity in my life. Certain sins were like, God, it's not that deep. there was this one time where I said, okay, no, you know what, it's fine. I'll pray about it tomorrow. It's almost like, does she know God perhaps? You know what I mean? And again, heart and heart, very dangerous. So now you can imagine, it's like this kingdom kid who grew up knowing God, who God has always been involved in her life. It suddenly becomes so much easier to get involved in certain things, but I feel like that's where I started to understand that I need to get it together. I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful that I got the time to learn this information and got the time to change. It was literally something that was always said. It's like, make sure you pray, make sure you read your Bible. And it was something that was so very easy to glaze over, like something that could go over my head very easily. But it played out terribly in my life. It was detrimental in my life because it was like I didn't know God's heart. I didn't know God's heart for me. I didn't know God's heart for his people. Certain things just became okay to me. Certain things just became okay to me because it was like I didn't know that they were wrong. And ignorance ignorance and pride. So yes, and also I remember when I was at church, I remember one of our pastors saying something about it is very hard to convince the youth, especially like older youth. It's very hard to convince us to like be excited about God again, especially like I'm saying, if you grew up a kingdom kid, like it's hard to be excited about God again and hard to convince us why we should like be fully invested in this, you know what I mean? And I was like, I sat there and I was like, actually real, like very easy for us to get lost in curiosity and just like you have a spiritual foundation and you know certain things are wrong, but it's like, like God will forgive me. And it says that sinning hardens the heart. You know what I mean? But also not reading the word hardens your heart. So imagine Uguti, my heart, it was rock hard. And I had to pray to ask God to soften my heart. And I also had to overcome a level of doubt that I had in my head because I was like, will I ever actually have like a real connection with God? Will I ever, because like when I'd watch certain people and the sensitivity that they had to God, it's like they would like they were so sensitive to the Holy Spirit. They're so sensitive about their relationship to God, and I was just like, I can do what He tells me. I can basically have a business partnership with God because that's what it was feeling like for a long time. But I never believed that I could actually have like an actual emotional connection with God where I could genuinely trust Him with everything. Because I think the way I came to that realization is because I was hurt by something. I had to let something go, and I was really hurt by that. And after that, it was just like I didn't want to necessarily trust God again with my heart, at least. So it was more a thing of like, if God told me to do something, I'll be like, okay, let's do it. Like, it almost felt like God didn't care about my emotions. It almost felt like God didn't care about how I feel about certain situations, how I feel about Him taking certain things away from me. And I was like, like God, hey, like, do you even get it? Like, obviously, I knew these things were for my good at the end of the day, but it was just like it was hard to understand that He still cares about me and that He knows that certain situations are gonna hurt and that He's still there for me in the transitioning process. So for me, it almost felt like God tells me to do something, I must just do it, and then ask no questions and feel nothing. And I had to realize, number one, I'm human. I'm going to feel. And number two, God understands that I'm human, that He is going to be there and He's going to like walk you through the emotions and walk you through everything, but with the firm understanding that this is for your good and His glory, right? I wouldn't have been able to understand that had I not opened my Bible, had I not seen the character that God is. Because like I was saying earlier, that I had a very little and undercooked understanding of God. All I felt was just His authority. That's all I felt, more than His, like, Him being a father, more than Him having a heart of compassion. And also, like, with things like, for example, like anxiety, when I was writing, it's like, yo, okay, no, the Bible says do not be anxious. Again, a foundational understanding. But then you have to remember that Jesus was anxious. Oh, before the cross, Jesus was anxious. Jesus was sweating blood. He was anxious, you know what I mean? So it's not that God doesn't understand those feelings, and it's not that He's not going to say, I get it, like, I get it, and I'm still here. I'm still here. Talk to me, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, if I was angry at God, He wouldn't hear from me. He would not hear from me. I could go days, weeks. I just wouldn't speak to Him. I wouldn't read my Bible. I wouldn't try, because I was just like, when you open your word, you see that He sees you. And the Bible does say that the word is sharper than any double-edged sword. So every time I've opened it, I have learned something, and every time I have learned something, it has changed me for the better. It's never ending. It's never like, also, I don't know, again, I had the ignorant idea that all of this information was already in my head and that I can be ignorant about it, and this is not the case. That's not the case. There are over 3,000 pages in here, and it's like, I may not be a big reader, but I may have to get into it if I want my life to change. Yeah, that was my testimony. I hope it made sense. So yes, thank you guys so much for joining me. Yeah, I am yet to talk about different parts of my testimony. I'm so excited. Oh, I am so excited. I've got so much to say. I can talk on just being a young Christian. I can talk on anything that ends in a ship, friendship, relationship, family, relationships, all those things. I am more than excited. I am so excited, like shucks. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.